Have you ever wondered why, despite working hard, you keep falling short of your goals? I used to think I just needed more motivation, better routines, or the perfect plan. But the real problem was harder to spot. Hidden habits in my own mind were quietly blocking my progress. Over time, I realized it wasn't laziness or lack of talent holding me back. Instead, I was falling into invisible mental traps, like putting off decisions, doubting myself, worrying too much, and seeing the worst in every situation. These habits didn't shout for attention. They worked in the background, slowly draining my energy and making it hard to move forward. That's why I wrote Mindset Traps, the 7 Silent Killers of Success. This book is my answer to those silent habits that stop so many of us from reaching our potential. Here, you won't find empty pep talks or complicated theories. Instead, you'll get practical tools you can use right away, even if you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or skeptical. As you read, you'll discover how to recognize those common mental traps that sneak into daily life and quietly hold you back. I'll show you a simple, 3-step method for breaking out of them. First, by noticing when you're caught, then by hitting pause, and finally by choosing a more helpful response. We'll talk about how to build habits that actually make you feel more confident and how to stop overthinking by turning worries into small, concrete actions. I'll also share ways to protect your mind from all the negativity that can seep in from the world around you so you can focus on what really matters to you. Every idea in this book comes from real-life experience and is designed to help you take action, not just think about it. You'll see that real change doesn't require superhuman willpower or overnight success. It happens through small, consistent steps and practical systems you can rely on, even on tough days. If you've ever felt stuck, lost momentum, or wondered why you can't seem to get it together, you're not alone, and there's a way out. My hope is that this book will help you see your invisible habits, give you simple ways to change them, and help you build a life where progress feels natural. Ready to get started? Let's break out of the traps together. Chapter 1. Name the traps. The most dangerous enemies are the ones you can't see coming. While you're busy optimizing your calendar and perfecting your morning routine, 7 invisible forces are quietly draining your momentum, sabotaging your execution, and keeping you stuck in the same patterns month after month. These aren't dramatic failures or obvious mistakes. They're subtle mental habits that masquerade as normal thinking while systematically undermining everything you're trying to build. You know the feeling. You have clear goals, solid plans, and genuine motivation. Yet somehow, projects stall, decisions drag on for weeks, opportunities slip by while you're thinking it through. The gap between what you intend and what you actually ship keeps widening, and you can't quite put your finger on why. The problem isn't your strategy, your skills, or your work ethic. It's the 7 mindset traps operating in the background of your thinking, creating friction where there should be flow. The silent saboteurs. These traps don't announce themselves. They don't feel like problems. They feel like prudence, preparation, and careful thinking. But each one quietly taxes your progress in a different way. Indifference masquerades as efficiency, convincing you that good enough effort on small tasks doesn't matter. Meanwhile, it's eroding your reputation and dulling your skills one mediocre performance at a time. Your brain learns to expect less from you, and others notice the pattern before you do. Indecision disguises itself as thoroughness, keeping you researching and analyzing while opportunities expire. Every day you delay a reversible choice is a day you could have been learning from real feedback instead of speculating about perfect outcomes that don't exist. Self-doubt presents as humility, shrinking your ambitions and execution quality just when you need to swing bigger. It whispers that you're not ready, not qualified, not experienced enough, conveniently ignoring that readiness comes from doing, not from feeling ready. Worry feels productive, like mental preparation for challenges ahead. In reality, it burns cognitive fuel without moving you forward, creating elaborate scenarios that rarely materialize while the real work sits untouched. Overcaution appears wise and responsible, protecting you from failure by keeping bets small and timelines long. But it also protects you from the rapid feedback cycles that build competence and the calculated risks that create breakthrough results. Pessimism seems realistic, scanning for problems and preparing for setbacks. Yet it narrows your attention to threats while blinding you to opportunities, making you slower to start and quicker to quit when obstacles appear. Poor mental inputs feel harmless, just staying informed, just checking in, just browsing for a few minutes. But your mind builds results from the raw materials you feed it, and low-grade inputs produce low-grade thinking, scattered attention, and weakened decision-making. The compound cost of drift. Here's what makes these traps particularly insidious. Their damage compounds silently over time. A few days of drift become months of stall. Fewer attempts mean fewer feedback cycles, which means slower mastery. Talent unused doesn't just stay static, it decays. And as your skills atrophy, your confidence follows, creating a downward spiral that's harder to break with each passing quarter. While you're caught in these loops, your competitors are taking more shots, learning faster, and building momentum. Network effects reward movers, not watchers. The people who ship consistently, decide quickly, and risk intelligently start pulling ahead not because they're more talented, but because they're accumulating more reps and more data. The gap widens each quarter. What starts as a small difference in pace becomes a massive difference in results. Projects that could have been finished months ago remain in progress. Skills that could have been developed through practice remain theoretical. Relationships that could have been built through consistent value delivery remain shallow. Your new operating system. The solution isn't motivation, inspiration, or trying harder. It's installing a simple 3-step operating system that runs automatically. Identify, interrupt, replace. When you spot a trap in action, you interrupt the pattern immediately and replace it with a specific countermove. Small daily reps compound into outsized results. This isn't about perfection or eliminating all mental friction. It's about building the reflexes to catch these patterns early and redirect your energy toward actions that actually move the scoreboard. You'll learn to recognize the fingerprints of each trap in your emails, meetings, and solo work. Then deploy targeted responses that create proof, pride, and pace. The framework rests on 4 core countersystems that you'll master throughout this book. Decision velocity teaches you to move fast on reversible choices while taking appropriate time on irreversible ones. Cognitive gatekeeping helps you control what information enters your mind, when, and why. The mental factory model shows you how to engineer better outputs by curating better inputs. And complaint conversion transforms problems into requests, requests into plans, and plans into shipped actions. The winner's mindset. Winners and losers think differently about the same situations. Winners own causes, act fast, and learn loudly. They seek evidence, not approval. They tell useful, true stories and move. When they encounter obstacles, they ask, "What can I control?" and immediately take the smallest meaningful action. Losers outsource blame and defend old narratives. They wait for certainty that never comes, hoard ideas instead of shipping them, and confuse worry with work. They mistake motion for progress and thinking for doing. They negotiate from weakness because they have no proof to support their claims. The difference isn't talent, luck, or circumstances. It's the quality of mental habits that run automatically in the background. Winners have trained themselves to interrupt unproductive patterns and replace them with productive ones. They've built systems that make good choices easier and bad choices harder. What happens next? In the coming chapters, you'll dive deep into each trap, learning to spot its unique fingerprints and deploy specific countermoves. You'll discover how to convert indifference into full-effort standards, transform indecision into rapid learning cycles, and turn worry into shipped actions. You'll learn to calibrate risk like a professional, maintain constructive optimism under pressure, and design an information environment that serves your goals. But first, you need to diagnose which traps are costing you the most. Over the next week, pay attention to moments when progress stalls, decisions drag, or energy dissipates without results. Tag each moment with the trap that's operating and the countermove you could deploy. This simple awareness practice will reveal patterns you've been blind to and create the foundation for everything that follows. The path ahead requires no special talent, no perfect conditions, and no dramatic life changes. Just the discipline to notice, interrupt, and replace. The traps have been running your show long enough. Time to take back control. But knowing the enemy is only the first step. Next, we'll tackle the most subtle saboteur of all, the one that convinces you that mediocre effort doesn't matter, while quietly eroding everything you're trying to build. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Indifference. You check your email with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. You attend meetings where your mind drifts to weekend plans. You complete tasks with just enough effort to avoid criticism, then wonder why your career feels stuck in neutral. This isn't laziness, it's something far more dangerous. It's the slow decay that masquerades as efficiency. The silent killer that convinces you that mediocre effort doesn't matter while systematically dismantling everything you're trying to build. Indifference feels reasonable. Why waste energy on trivial tasks when you could save it for the important stuff? Why give your best effort to a routine email when you have bigger projects waiting? This logic seems sound until you realize what's actually happening. You're training yourself to accept less, and everyone around you is taking notes. The invisible erosion. Here's what indifference really costs you, and why it's more dangerous than any dramatic failure. Every time you phone it in, you're not just completing a task poorly, you're rewiring your brain to expect less from yourself. Your standards drift downward so gradually that you don't notice until someone else gets the promotion, the client, or the opportunity you thought was yours. People remember reliability more than brilliance. They notice who shows up with consistent energy and who treats every interaction like it matters. When you approach tasks with indifference, you're broadcasting a message about your character that echoes far beyond the immediate work. You're signaling that you don't respect the process, the people involved, or yourself enough to bring your best effort. This creates a feedback loop that's hard to break. Others begin to mirror your energy level. They give you less challenging assignments, fewer opportunities to prove yourself, and lower expectations overall. Your reputation shifts from rising star to reliable but uninspiring. The gap between your potential and your reality widens with each half-hearted performance. Meanwhile, your skills atrophy. Excellence is a muscle that weakens without regular use. When you consistently deliver good enough work, you lose the ability to recognize what great work looks like. Your standards become calibrated to mediocrity, and climbing back to higher levels requires more effort than maintaining them would have. The practice principle. The solution starts with a fundamental shift in perspective. Every task, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, is training for bigger moments. The way you handle a routine email is practice for how you'll handle a crucial client communication. The effort you put into a weekly report is rehearsal for the presentation that could change your career. This isn't about perfectionism or burning yourself out on trivial work. It's about recognizing that there's no such thing as unimportant practice. Athletes don't save their best effort for game day. They bring intensity to every drill, every scrimmage, every training session, because they understand that habits formed in practice show up under pressure. Your brain doesn't distinguish between important and unimportant when it comes to building patterns. It simply records what you do repeatedly and makes that your default. If you consistently approach tasks with minimal effort, that becomes your automatic response when stakes are high. If you train yourself to bring full effort regardless of the task's perceived importance, that intensity becomes available when you need it most. The scoreboard solution. Indifference thrives in the shadows, where effort levels remain invisible and unmeasured. The antidote is making your energy and output visible through simple tracking that creates accountability to yourself. This isn't about complex systems or elaborate metrics. It's about two numbers that capture what matters most. Focused Minutes tracks the time you spend in deep, undistracted work on any task. Not just the hours you're physically present, but the minutes when your attention is fully engaged and your effort is genuine. This metric reveals the gap between time spent and energy invested, forcing you to confront the difference between motion and progress. Artifacts Shipped counts the tangible outputs you complete and deliver each day. An email sent, a document finished, a problem solved, a decision made. This metric prevents you from confusing busy work with real work and creates a daily sense of momentum that compounds over time. These two metrics work together to create a feedback loop that rewards effort and output rather than time and intention. When you can see your focused minutes and shipped artifacts accumulating day by day, the abstract concept of working hard becomes concrete and measurable. The identity shift. The deepest change happens when you stop defining yourself by your feelings about work and start defining yourself by your approach to work. Instead of "I'm someone who works hard when motivated," you become "I'm someone who brings full effort regardless of the task." This shift from mood-dependent to identity-driven performance changes everything. When effort becomes part of your identity, you stop negotiating with yourself about whether a task deserves your best. You don't waste mental energy deciding how much effort to invest. You have a standard, and you meet it. This eliminates the cognitive overhead of constantly recalibrating your effort level based on your perception of a task's importance. The minimum standard protocol makes this practical. For each type of task you regularly encounter, you define a non-negotiable quality bar that represents your baseline effort. Not your maximum effort, but the minimum you'll accept from yourself. This standard becomes your floor, not your ceiling, ensuring that even your worst days produce work you can be proud of. The daily discipline. Real change happens through daily practice, not dramatic gestures. The after-action review creates a simple ritual that takes less than 2 minutes but compounds into massive improvements over time. Each evening, you write 3 sentences: what worked in your effort and focus today, what didn't work, and what you'll change tomorrow. This isn't about judgment or self-criticism. It's about pattern recognition and continuous adjustment. Over time, you'll notice which conditions support your best effort and which ones undermine it. You'll identify the early warning signs of drift and develop specific strategies to counter them before they take hold. The weekly pattern scan takes this further, looking for broader trends in your effort and output. Are certain types of tasks consistently draining your energy? Are specific times of day when your focus is strongest? Are there environmental factors that support or sabotage your best work? These insights become the foundation for designing systems that make excellence easier and indifference harder. The momentum machine. Once you start tracking and improving your effort levels, something interesting happens. The visible progress creates its own motivation. Seeing your focused minutes increase and your shipped artifacts accumulate generates a sense of momentum that makes the next day's effort feel more natural. This is where the magic of streaks comes in. Not volume streaks that burn you out, but consistency streaks that build identity. Never breaking the chain twice means that if you miss a day of meeting your standards, you get back on track immediately rather than letting one slip become a slide. The key is removing friction from starting. Open the document, name the file, write the title before you feel ready. Stand up to begin work sessions. Set micro deadlines that create urgency even for routine tasks. These small actions bypass the mental resistance that feeds indifference and get you moving before your brain can negotiate. The compound effect. The results of defeating indifference extend far beyond individual tasks. When you consistently bring full effort to everything you touch, people notice. Your reputation shifts from someone who does adequate work to someone who can be trusted with important projects. Opportunities start flowing toward you because others know you'll handle them with care and precision. Your own confidence grows as you accumulate evidence of your reliability. You stop doubting whether you can handle bigger challenges because you have proof of your ability to execute consistently. This evidence-based confidence is unshakable because it's built on actions, not affirmations. Most importantly, you develop what high performers call process confidence. The certainty that regardless of outcomes, you'll bring your best effort to whatever you're doing. This removes the anxiety and second-guessing that plague people who only try hard when they feel motivated or when stakes are obviously high. The path forward is simple, but not easy. Start tracking your focused minutes and shipped artifacts today. Define your minimum standards for common tasks. Commit to the daily review that keeps you honest and improving. Treat every task as training for the moments that will define your future. But even as you master the art of consistent effort, another trap lurks in the shadows. One that convinces you that thinking longer will lead to better outcomes, while the real opportunities slip away as you analyze yourself into paralysis. Chapter 3: Indecision. You have 3 emails sitting in your drafts folder, each one rewritten multiple times but never sent. A project proposal that's been almost ready for 2 weeks. A career decision you've been researching for months, accumulating information but never pulling the trigger. You tell yourself you're being thorough, responsible, strategic. But deep down, you know the truth. You're stuck in the quicksand of maybe, and every day you wait, the opportunity cost grows larger. Indecision feels like prudence. It masquerades as careful analysis and responsible planning. But what it really represents is a hidden tax on your progress, a compound interest working against you while you search for certainty that will never arrive. The irony is brutal. In trying to avoid making the wrong choice, you guarantee making no choice at all, which is often the worst choice of all. The velocity advantage. Here's what most people miss about decision-making. Speed itself is a competitive advantage. While you're gathering the 15th piece of data to feel confident about a choice, someone else has already made the decision, learned from the results, and adjusted course twice. They're not smarter or more reckless. They understand something fundamental about how progress actually works. Every decision you make quickly unlocks the next data point. Each choice creates feedback that informs the next choice. This compounds rapidly, creating what high performers call decision velocity, the ability to move through choices fast enough to generate learning cycles that outpace competitors who are still analyzing the first decision. The math is unforgiving. If you take 2 weeks to make decisions that could be made in 2 days, you're not just 10 days behind. You're missing 10 days of feedback that could inform better decisions down the line. Your competitor who moves faster isn't just ahead, they're learning faster, adapting faster, and building momentum while you're still in planning mode. The certainty trap. The biggest myth about decision-making is that better decisions come from more information. This feels intuitively true, but it's wrong in a dangerous way. Research consistently shows that decision quality peaks at around 60% of available information, then plateaus or even declines as analysis paralysis sets in. Why does this happen? Because the brain has limited processing capacity, and beyond a certain point, additional information creates noise rather than signal. You start seeing patterns that aren't there, weighing factors that don't matter, and second-guessing insights that were clear when you had less data. The pursuit of perfect information becomes the enemy of good decisions. Waiting also increases opportunity cost in ways that are easy to ignore but expensive to experience. Every day you delay a reversible decision is a day you could have been testing, learning, and iterating. The market doesn't pause while you analyze. Competitors don't wait for you to feel ready. Opportunities have expiration dates, and they don't extend them for thorough planners. The door framework. The breakthrough comes when you realize that not all decisions deserve the same treatment. Some choices are like walking through a two-way door. If you don't like what's on the other side, you can simply walk back through. Others are like one-way doors, Once you're through, there's no easy return path. Two-way door decisions should be made fast. These are choices where the downside is limited, the learning potential is high, and reversal is possible without catastrophic cost. Hiring a contractor for a small project, testing a new marketing channel, trying a different workflow, these decisions benefit from speed over analysis because the real learning happens after you choose, not before. One-way door decisions deserve slower, more thorough consideration. These are choices with significant irreversible consequences, major career moves, large financial commitments, strategic pivots that affect multiple people. Here, the extra time spent analyzing pays dividends because the cost of being wrong is high and the ability to course correct is limited. The key insight is that most decisions you're agonizing over are actually two-way doors disguised as one-way doors. Your brain's loss aversion makes reversible choices feel permanent, creating artificial urgency around decisions that don't warrant it. Learning to classify decisions correctly is the first step toward appropriate speed. The minimum viable choice. Once you've identified a two-way door decision, the next step is finding the smallest choice that moves you forward. This is the minimum viable decision, the least committal option that still generates useful feedback. Instead of trying to make the perfect choice, you make the choice that teaches you what you need to know to make the next choice better. This approach transforms decision-making from a high-stakes, one-shot game into a series of small experiments. Instead of choosing the perfect marketing strategy, you test 3 small campaigns. Instead of selecting the ideal team structure, you try a pilot arrangement for 30 days. Instead of committing to a major software platform, you run a limited trial with core features. The minimum viable decision reduces both risk and paralysis. The stakes feel manageable because the commitment is small. The learning is immediate because you're testing real conditions rather than theoretical scenarios. And the momentum builds because each small decision creates confidence and data for larger decisions. The rollback plan. Fear of making wrong decisions often stems from imagining worst-case scenarios without considering how you'd respond to them. The rollback plan changes this dynamic by explicitly planning your exit strategy before you make the choice. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation that enables boldness. Before making any significant two-way door decision, write down the specific conditions that would trigger a reversal and the exact steps you'd take to implement it. If the new hire isn't working out after 60 days, here's how you'll handle the transition. If the marketing experiment doesn't hit targets after 3 weeks, here's how you'll reallocate the budget. If the process change creates more problems than it solves, here's how you'll revert to the previous system. This exercise does 2 powerful things. First, it reveals that most disasters are actually manageable inconveniences with clear solutions. Second, it gives you permission to move forward because you've already solved the problem of what to do if things go wrong. The rollback plan transforms unknown risks into known contingencies. The review cycle. Decision velocity isn't just about moving fast, it's about learning fast. The 48-hour review creates a feedback loop that improves your decision-making over time. Within 2 days of making any significant choice, you compare what you predicted would happen with what actually happened, then adjust your decision-making process based on the gap. This isn't about judging whether the decision was right or wrong. It's about calibrating your prediction accuracy and identifying patterns in your decision-making. Do you consistently overestimate timelines, underestimate resistance to change, overlook certain types of risks? These patterns become visible only through systematic review, and once you see them, you can correct for them. The review also prevents sunk cost bias from keeping you attached to decisions that aren't working. By pre-committing to specific review dates and criteria, you create objective checkpoints that override the emotional investment that builds up over time. This makes it easier to change course when evidence suggests a different path. The speed discipline. Building decision velocity requires deliberate practice in moving faster than feels comfortable. Start by banning the word maybe from your vocabulary. Force every choice into a yes or no with a specific timeline attached. Maybe we should try that becomes, yes, we'll test it for 2 weeks starting Monday, or no, because it doesn't align with our current priorities. Create artificial deadlines for decisions that don't have natural ones. Give yourself 48 hours to choose between options, then stick to the deadline regardless of how much additional analysis you could do. The goal isn't perfect decisions, it's building the muscle of moving forward with incomplete information. Practice the 3-option rule to avoid binary thinking that creates false urgency. Instead of choosing between A or B, always generate option C. This prevents you from getting stuck in either-or thinking and often reveals creative alternatives that are better than the original choices. The compound effect. As you build decision velocity, something remarkable happens. The quality of your decisions improves not because you're analyzing more, but because you're learning more. Each quick decision generates feedback that informs the next decision. Your pattern recognition improves. Your intuition becomes more reliable. Your confidence grows because you have evidence of your ability to course correct when needed. People start seeing you as decisive and action-oriented. Projects move faster when you're involved because decisions don't become bottlenecks. Teams gain confidence because they know choices will be made promptly rather than endlessly debated. Your reputation shifts from thoughtful planner to effective executor. Most importantly, you escape the exhausting mental overhead of carrying unmade decisions. Each choice you make quickly is one less thing consuming your cognitive bandwidth. Your mental energy becomes available for execution rather than analysis, creating a virtuous cycle of action and results. The path forward is clear. Classify your stuck decisions as 2-way or 1-way doors. Set deadlines for the 2-way choices and move. Create rollback plans that give you permission to be bold. Review your decisions systematically to improve your calibration over time. Practice moving faster than feels comfortable until speed becomes natural. But even as you master the art of swift decision-making, another trap waits to undermine your progress. One that whispers you're not qualified, not ready, not experienced enough, while the evidence of your capability sits ignored in plain sight. Chapter 4, Self-Doubt. You stare at the blank presentation slide, cursor blinking mockingly. The opportunity is real, a chance to pitch your ideas to senior leadership, but the voice in your head is louder than your ambition. Who are you to think you belong in that room? They'll see right through you. You're not ready for this level. So you water down your proposal, hedge your recommendations, and deliver a forgettable performance that confirms your worst fears about yourself. This isn't humility, it's self-sabotage disguised as realism. Self-doubt feels protective, like it's keeping you safe from embarrassment and failure. But what it's really doing is setting an artificial ceiling on your performance, ensuring that you never swing as hard as you're capable of swinging. The cruel irony is that by trying to avoid failure, you guarantee mediocrity, which is its own kind of failure. The ceiling effect. Your confidence level determines your performance ceiling more than talent, preparation, or opportunity. When you believe you can't, you unconsciously adjust your effort to match that belief. You prepare less thoroughly, speak less boldly, and take fewer risks. Your brain, trying to be helpful, aligns your actions with your expectations to avoid the cognitive dissonance of believing one thing and doing another. This creates a vicious cycle. Weak belief leads to weak effort, which produces weak results, which reinforces weak belief. You interpret mediocre outcomes as evidence of your limitations rather than evidence of your constrained effort. The prophecy fulfills itself so smoothly that you never see the mechanism at work. Meanwhile, people with strong belief in their capabilities approach the same challenges differently. They prepare more thoroughly because they expect to succeed. They speak more confidently because they assume their ideas have value. They take bigger swings because they believe they can handle whatever comes next. Their belief doesn't guarantee success, but it unlocks the full range of their capabilities. The evidence revolution. The solution isn't positive thinking or motivational mantras. Empty affirmations create cognitive dissonance when your brain knows they're unsupported by evidence. The real breakthrough comes from building what performers call confidence from evidence, unshakable certainty based on documented proof of your capabilities. This is fundamentally different from hoping you can do something or believing you should be able to do something. It's knowing you can do something because you have a record of doing it. Your brain can't argue with evidence the way it can dismiss affirmations. When you have proof, doubt becomes irrelevant. The key insight is that confidence isn't a feeling you need to generate. It's a conclusion you reach based on data. Just like a scientist doesn't feel that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, they know it because they've measured it repeatedly. Your job is to become a scientist of your own capabilities, collecting data that makes confidence inevitable rather than optional. The Win Ledger System. Building evidence requires systematic collection of proof points that demonstrate your competence. The Win Ledger is your database of victories, but not the kind you might expect. These aren't just major achievements or public recognitions. They're the small, daily proofs that you can do what you say you'll do. Every promise you keep to yourself is evidence. Every deadline you meet is proof. Every skill you practice is data. Every problem you solve adds to your ledger. The goal is to accumulate so much evidence of your reliability and competence that your brain has no choice but to update its assessment of your capabilities. The power lies in the granularity. Instead of waiting for big wins to feel confident, you create confidence through micro wins that happen daily. Finish that report on time? Evidence. Completed your planned workout? Proof. Sent that difficult email instead of procrastinating? Data point. These small victories compound into unshakable certainty about your ability to execute. Most people overlook these micro wins because they seem insignificant compared to major achievements. But your brain doesn't distinguish between big and small when it comes to pattern recognition. It simply notices what you do consistently and adjusts its predictions accordingly. 100 small proofs of competence create stronger confidence than one large achievement surrounded by inconsistency. The attribution game. How you explain your successes and failures to yourself determines whether experiences build or erode confidence. Most people have this backwards. They attribute successes to luck and failures to personal inadequacy. This pattern systematically undermines confidence by discounting evidence that supports capability while amplifying evidence that suggests limitation. Attribution control flips this script. You learn to attribute outcomes to factors you can control: preparation, strategy, effort, and persistence. When things go well, you recognize the role your actions played in creating that outcome. When things go poorly, you focus on what you can adjust rather than what's wrong with you as a person. This isn't about denying reality or avoiding responsibility. It's about focusing your attention on the variables that actually matter for future performance. Whether you're naturally talented or lucky is less important than whether you prepared thoroughly and executed consistently. Those are the factors that predict future success and the ones you can influence directly. The shift is subtle but powerful. Instead of "I succeeded because I got lucky," you think "I succeeded because I prepared well and executed my plan." Instead of "I failed because I'm not good enough," you think "I failed because my strategy was flawed and I need to adjust my approach." This keeps your focus on actionable factors rather than fixed characteristics. The self-talk legislature. Your inner dialogue shapes your reality more than external circumstances. Most people let this conversation run on autopilot, allowing doubt and criticism to dominate without challenge. Self-talk governance means taking conscious control of this internal narrative and legislating what thoughts get attention and what thoughts get dismissed. The technique is simple but requires practice. When you notice self-doubt arising, you don't fight it or try to suppress it. You redirect it into action. If I think I'll fail, then I start a 10-minute practice session immediately. If I think I'm not qualified, then I list 3 relevant experiences from my background. If I think they'll reject my idea, then I refine my presentation for 5 minutes. This approach transforms doubt from a paralyzing force into a trigger for productive behavior. Instead of getting stuck in negative thought loops, you use doubt as a signal to take action that builds competence. Over time, your brain learns that doubt leads to improvement rather than rumination, changing the entire dynamic of how you relate to uncertainty. The key is having predetermined responses ready before doubt strikes. In the moment of uncertainty, your rational mind is compromised and your emotional brain is in control. But if you've already decided how you'll respond to specific doubts, you can execute the plan automatically without having to think your way through the emotional storm. The reps before ratings rule. One of the biggest confidence killers is premature evaluation. You try something once or twice, judge the quality harshly, and conclude you're not good at it. This pattern prevents you from developing competence because you quit before you've done enough repetitions to see improvement. The solution is postponing judgment until after you've completed a meaningful number of repetitions. Commit to 10 attempts before evaluating quality. Focus on completion rather than perfection. Ship work before you think it's ready. This approach separates learning from evaluation, allowing you to build skill without the constant interference of self-criticism. This rule is particularly powerful for new challenges where you have no existing evidence of competence. Instead of asking, "Am I good at this?" after the first attempt, you ask, "What did I learn from this rep that will make the next one better?" The focus shifts from performance to improvement, which is where confidence actually develops. The magic happens around rep 7 or 8 when you start noticing patterns in what works and what doesn't. By rep 10, you have enough data to make meaningful adjustments. By rep 20, you have genuine competence. But most people quit after rep 3 because they judge too early and conclude they lack talent. The proof portfolio. Building lasting confidence requires creating a collection of evidence that you can access when doubt strikes. Think of this as your personal highlight reel, not for public consumption, but for private reinforcement when your brain starts questioning your capabilities. Document your wins as they happen. Screenshot positive feedback. Save emails where people thank you for your work. Keep a record of problems you've solved and obstacles you've overcome. When self-doubt emerges, you have concrete evidence to counter it rather than relying on memory, which tends to emphasize failures over successes. The portfolio works because it makes your competence visible and undeniable. When doubt whispers, "You can't handle this," you can point to specific instances where you handled similar challenges successfully. When fear suggests you're not qualified, you can review evidence of your qualifications in action. The proof becomes stronger than the doubt. Regular review of your proof portfolio creates a positive feedback loop. Seeing your accumulated evidence of competence makes you more likely to take on new challenges, which creates more evidence, which builds more confidence. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing, with each success making the next attempt feel more natural. The momentum trigger. Confidence builds through action, not contemplation. When doubt strikes, the fastest way to counter it is through immediate movement toward your goal. Start a 5-minute work session. Make one phone call. Send one email. Take one small step that proves you can act despite uncertainty. This works because action generates evidence in real time. Each small step you take while feeling doubtful proves that doubt doesn't control your behavior. Your brain notices this pattern and begins to separate feeling from action, reducing doubt's power to paralyze you in future situations. The key is making the first action small enough that doubt can't stop it. You're not trying to solve the entire problem or complete the whole project. You're just proving that you can move forward despite uncertainty. This creates momentum that makes the next action easier, and the next one after that. Over time, you develop what high performers call process confidence, the certainty that you can execute regardless of how you feel. This is more valuable than outcome confidence because it's entirely under your control. You may not know if you'll succeed, but you know you'll show up and do the work, which is the foundation of all achievement. The path forward is clear. Start collecting evidence of your competence through daily wins, control how you attribute outcomes, govern your self-talk, and take action when doubt strikes. Build a proof portfolio that makes confidence inevitable rather than optional. But even as you master the art of evidence-based confidence, another trap lurks in the shadows, one that burns mental energy without producing progress, creating elaborate scenarios that rarely materialize while the real work waits untouched. Chapter 5: Worry. Your mind is running a disaster movie on repeat. The client presentation that could go wrong in 17 different ways. The project deadline that might slip despite your best efforts. The conversation you need to have but keep postponing because you can see all the ways it could explode. You tell yourself this mental rehearsal is preparation, that thinking through problems ahead of time makes you more ready to handle them. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not preparing, you're procrastinating with extra steps. Worry feels productive because your brain is busy. Thoughts are racing, scenarios are being analyzed, contingencies are being considered. It has all the hallmarks of important work except for one crucial element. Nothing is actually getting done. While you're mentally rehearsing disasters, the real work sits untouched. Deadlines creep closer, and the very problems you're worried about become more likely to materialize through neglect. The energy drain. Worry is a cognitive vampire that feeds on your mental bandwidth without producing any value in return. Every minute you spend catastrophizing is a minute not spent on actions that could prevent the catastrophe. Your brain has limited processing power, and worry consumes massive amounts of it while generating zero forward progress. The cruel irony is that worry makes the problems it fears more likely to occur. When you're mentally exhausted from rumination, you have less energy for the focused work that could solve the actual issues. When you're emotionally drained from imagining worst-case scenarios, you're less creative in finding solutions. When you're cognitively overloaded from running mental simulations, you make poorer decisions in real situations. Chronic worry also distorts your perception of threat and agency. The more time you spend thinking about what could go wrong, the more dangerous the world appears and the less capable you feel of handling challenges. This creates a feedback loop where increased worry leads to decreased confidence, which leads to more worry, which leads to even less action. Meanwhile, the problems you're worried about remain unsolved. The difficult conversation doesn't happen. The project doesn't advance. The skills don't improve. Worry creates the illusion of engagement while ensuring that nothing meaningful changes. The false productivity trap. The biggest myth about worry is that it serves a useful purpose, that thinking more about problems will help you prevent mistakes or be better prepared when challenges arise. This feels intuitively true because worry activates the same mental processes used in legitimate planning and problem solving. But there's a crucial difference between productive analysis and unproductive rumination. Productive thinking is bounded, specific, and action-oriented. You identify a concrete problem, generate potential solutions, evaluate options, and choose a course of action. The thinking has a clear endpoint and leads directly to behavior. Worry, by contrast, is unbounded, vague, and circular. You identify a potential problem, imagine increasingly elaborate scenarios, generate more questions than answers, and end up exactly where you started, except more anxious. The second myth is that you need to feel calm before you can take effective action. This backwards thinking keeps you stuck in worry loops because action is what creates calm, not the other way around. When you take concrete steps towards solving a problem, you generate evidence that you can handle the situation. This evidence reduces your brain's threat assessment and naturally decreases anxiety. The third myth is that the intensity of your worry reflects how much you care about the outcome. This confuses emotional arousal with commitment. Caring is demonstrated through action, not through feeling. The person who worries constantly about their health but never exercises cares less than the person who worries occasionally but maintains consistent healthy habits. The transmutation process. The solution isn't to eliminate worry, it's to transform it into useful action. Worry contains valuable information about what matters to you and what problems need attention. The key is extracting that information quickly and converting it into concrete steps rather than letting it spiral into unproductive rumination. The 3-column drill provides a systematic way to make this conversion. In the first column, you write down the specific fear that's driving your worry, not a vague sense of unease, but a precise statement of what you're afraid will happen. The client will reject our proposal instead of things might go badly. I'll miss the deadline and disappoint my team instead of I'm stressed about work. The second column identifies what aspects of the situation you can actually control. This is crucial because worry tends to focus on outcomes rather than inputs, on results rather than actions. You can't control whether the client accepts your proposal, but you can control how thoroughly you prepare, how clearly you present, and how well you anticipate their concerns. You can't control whether you'll meet every deadline perfectly, but you can control your daily work habits, your communication with stakeholders, and your willingness to ask for help when needed. The third column contains the first 10-minute action you can take to address one of the controllable factors. Not a comprehensive solution, not a perfect plan, just the smallest meaningful step you can take immediately. Send an email asking for clarification. Outline the key points for your presentation. Block time on your calendar for focused work. The goal is motion, not perfection. The do block method. Once you've identified your first action, the do block creates a container for actually executing it. Set a timer for 15 minutes, eliminate distractions, and focus solely on completing the action you identified. No research, no email checking, no quick conversations with colleagues, just pure execution on the specific task at hand. This time-boxed approach serves multiple purposes. First, it makes the action feel manageable. 15 minutes isn't overwhelming, even for tasks you've been avoiding. Second, it creates urgency that overcomes the inertia of worry. When the timer is running, you're more likely to start immediately rather than continuing to think about starting. Third, it provides a natural endpoint that prevents perfectionism from taking over. The magic happens during these focused blocks. As you take concrete action on the problem you've been worrying about, your brain receives disconfirming evidence about the threat level. The task isn't as difficult as you imagined. You're more capable than you feared. Progress is possible, even if it's incremental. This real-world feedback is far more powerful than any amount of mental reassurance. Most importantly, the do block transforms worry from a passive experience into an active one. Instead of being something that happens to you, worry becomes a trigger for productive behavior. Your brain begins to associate the feeling of worry with the action of problem solving rather than with the action of ruminating. The ship or schedule rule. At the end of each do block, you face a simple choice. Ship what you've completed or schedule the next block. If you've finished the task or reached a natural stopping point, ship the result immediately. Send the email, submit the document, make the phone call. Don't let completed work sit in limbo while you second-guess or polish unnecessarily. If the task isn't complete, schedule the next work block before you stop. Put it on your calendar with a specific time and duration. This prevents the work from falling back into the worry category and ensures that momentum continues. The act of scheduling also provides psychological closure. Your brain knows when the work will continue, so it can stop churning about it in the background. This rule prevents the common pattern of doing good work during focused blocks, but then letting it stagnate afterward. Shipping creates real progress and generates feedback that informs your next actions. Scheduling ensures that progress continues systematically rather than sporadically. The combination of shipping and scheduling also builds evidence of your capability to handle challenges. Each completed task and each kept commitment to yourself strengthens your confidence in your ability to work through problems rather than just worry about them. The physical reset. Worry is as much a physical state as a mental one. When you're caught in rumination loops, your body often reflects the mental tension, shallow breathing, tight shoulders, restless energy that has nowhere to go. Breaking the physical pattern can interrupt the mental pattern and create space for productive action. Simple physical interventions can reset your state quickly. Stand up and speak your first action step aloud. The combination of movement and verbalization engages different parts of your brain and breaks the internal thought loop. Take 30 seconds for deliberate breathing or a brief walk around your workspace. These micro-interventions don't require significant time, but can shift your mental state dramatically. The key is using physical movement as a bridge between worry and action rather than as an escape from the problem. You're not trying to avoid the issue or distract yourself from it. You're changing your state so you can engage with it more effectively. The scope reduction technique. One of the biggest obstacles to converting worry into action is that the problems feel too large and complex to address. When you're worried about the project failing or the relationship ending, the scope feels overwhelming and you don't know where to start. The solution is aggressive scope reduction until you reach something actionable. Take your worry and halve the scope, then halve it again. Keep reducing until you have something you can address in a single work session. Instead of fixing the project, focus on clarifying the next milestone. Instead of saving the relationship, focus on scheduling a conversation about expectations. Instead of getting my finances in order, focus on reviewing last month's expenses. This technique works because it transforms abstract anxieties into concrete tasks. Your brain knows how to handle specific, bounded problems even when it feels overwhelmed by large, vague ones. Each small action you complete builds momentum and confidence for tackling the next piece of the larger challenge. The worry portfolio. As you practice converting worry into action, you'll notice patterns in what triggers your anxiety and what types of actions most effectively address it. Some worries are best handled through preparation and planning. Others require direct communication or boundary setting. Still others need systematic skill building over time. Building a personal portfolio of worry-to-action conversions makes you faster and more effective at this process. When familiar anxieties arise, you already know the most effective response rather than having to figure it out from scratch each time. This reduces the time between noticing worry and taking productive action. The goal isn't to eliminate worry entirely, it's to develop the reflexes to channel it productively. Worry becomes a signal to engage rather than a reason to avoid. Problems become opportunities to practice your problem-solving skills rather than sources of endless rumination. The path forward is clear. When worry strikes, extract the specific fear, identify what you can control, and take the first small action immediately. Use time-boxed work sessions to build momentum and ship results quickly. Convert mental loops into concrete lists and abstract anxieties into specific tasks. But even as you master the art of transforming worry into action, another trap waits in the wings, one that disguises itself as wisdom and prudence while systematically limiting your upside and keeping you from the very experiences that build real competence. Chapter 6, Overcaution. You've been researching the same opportunity for 3 months. The business idea that could change your trajectory, the career move that could unlock new possibilities, the creative project that could showcase your talents, all sitting in a folder marked Someday while you gather more information, wait for better timing, and search for guarantees that don't exist. You tell yourself you're being prudent, responsible, strategic, but what you're really doing is using safety as an excuse for inaction. Overcaution feels like wisdom. It appears thoughtful and mature, the opposite of reckless gambling or impulsive decision-making. But there's a hidden cost to this approach that compounds silently over time. While you're protecting yourself from small losses, you're also protecting yourself from the experiences that create real competence, the feedback that builds judgment, and the opportunities that generate breakthrough results. The losing strategy. Playing not to lose is fundamentally different from playing to win, and the difference shows up in results over time. When your primary goal is avoiding failure, you make choices that minimize downside rather than maximize learning. You take fewer shots, which means you generate less data about what works. You avoid uncertainty, which means you never develop the skills to navigate ambiguous situations. You wait for perfect conditions, which means you miss the windows when action is most valuable. This creates a vicious cycle. Because you take fewer risks, you have fewer experiences to learn from. Because you have fewer experiences, you remain uncertain about your capabilities. Because you're uncertain about your capabilities, you take even fewer risks. Your comfort zone shrinks rather than expands, and opportunities that once seemed possible begin to feel impossible. Meanwhile, people who take more calculated risks are accumulating experiences, building skills, and developing the pattern recognition that comes only from repeated exposure to uncertainty. They're not necessarily smarter or more talented, they're just getting more repetitions. And in a world where competence comes from practice, more reps usually beats more analysis. The cruel irony is that excessive caution often creates the very outcomes it's trying to avoid. By waiting too long to act, you miss opportunities that won't come again. By avoiding small risks, you force yourself into larger risks later when circumstances become more desperate. By trying to prevent all possible failures, you guarantee the failure of never trying. The experimentation mindset. The solution isn't reckless risk-taking, it's intelligent experimentation. Instead of making big, irreversible bets or avoiding risk entirely, you learn to run many small, controlled tests that generate maximum learning with minimum downside. This approach transforms risk from something to be avoided into something to be managed systematically. The key insight is that most breakthrough opportunities come not from single perfect decisions, but from portfolios of small experiments where a few big wins more than compensate for many small losses. This is how venture capitalists think, how researchers approach discovery, and how successful entrepreneurs build companies. They don't try to avoid failure, they try to fail fast, cheap, and informatively. This mindset shift changes everything. Instead of asking, "How can I guarantee this will work?" you ask, "How can I test this quickly and cheaply?" Instead of seeking certainty before acting, you seek the fastest path to useful feedback. Instead of trying to predict outcomes, you design experiments that reveal what you need to know. The goal isn't to eliminate risk, it's to take smarter risks more systematically. You want to be in situations where your potential upside significantly exceeds your potential downside, where you can afford to be wrong multiple times while needing to be right only occasionally. The kill criteria framework. One of the biggest obstacles to intelligent risk-taking is the fear that you'll get trapped in bad situations with no clear exit strategy. The solution is defining your exit criteria before you enter, creating objective triggers that remove emotion and sunk cost bias from the decision to continue or quit. Kill criteria are specific, measurable conditions that automatically end an experiment regardless of how much time or energy you've invested. If the new marketing channel doesn't generate qualified leads within 30 days, you stop. If the side project doesn't show user engagement within 60 days, you pivot. If the new process doesn't improve efficiency within 90 days, you revert to the old system. These criteria serve multiple purposes. First, they give you permission to take risks because you know exactly how you'll limit your losses. Second, they prevent the escalation of commitment that keeps people attached to failing strategies. Third, they force you to define success up front, which clarifies what you're actually testing. The key is setting these criteria when you're optimistic and rational, before you're emotionally invested in the outcome. Once you're in the middle of an experiment, your judgment becomes compromised by the desire to justify your investment. But if you've already decided what constitutes failure, you can execute the exit plan without having to make a fresh decision under pressure. The bet-sizing discipline. Intelligent experimentation requires disciplined bet-sizing, making each individual risk small enough that failure doesn't materially damage your position while making enough bets that success becomes likely over time. This is the opposite of both excessive caution and reckless gambling. The rule is simple. Make bets you can afford to lose completely while ensuring that success on any single bet could meaningfully improve your situation. If you're testing a new business idea, invest time and money you can lose without affecting your ability to pay bills or maintain your current responsibilities. If you're exploring a career change, start with projects and conversations that don't require leaving your current job. This approach allows you to take multiple shots without risking catastrophic failure. You're not betting the farm on any single outcome, but you're not avoiding the game entirely either. You're playing a portfolio strategy where individual losses are manageable, but collective wins can be transformative. The discipline comes in resisting the temptation to increase bet sizes when early results look promising. Success in small experiments doesn't automatically justify larger investments. It justifies more experiments at slightly larger scales. Growth should be gradual and evidence-based, not emotional and dramatic. The review rhythm. Systematic experimentation requires systematic evaluation. Without regular review cycles, experiments tend to drift without clear resolution, consuming resources without generating insights. The weekly review creates a forcing function that prevents this drift and ensures that each experiment reaches a clear conclusion. Every week, you evaluate each active experiment against 3 criteria: scale it up, continue as planned, or shut it down. This isn't about whether you feel optimistic or pessimistic. It's about whether the objective evidence suggests the experiment is working according to your predefined success metrics. Scale decisions are based on clear evidence that the experiment is exceeding expectations and could benefit from additional resources. Continue decisions are based on evidence that the experiment is on track but needs more time to reach definitive conclusions. Stop decisions are based on evidence that the experiment has reached its kill criteria or is clearly not working as designed. This rhythm prevents the common problems of abandoning experiments too early when they hit inevitable obstacles or continuing them too long when they're clearly not working. It also creates a database of learnings that inform future experiments, making your risk-taking more intelligent over time. The parallel processing strategy. One of the most effective ways to reduce attachment to individual outcomes is running multiple experiments simultaneously. When you have several tests running in parallel, you're less emotionally invested in any single one succeeding. This makes it easier to shut down failing experiments and double down on promising ones. Parallel processing also increases your learning rate because you're testing multiple hypotheses simultaneously rather than sequentially. Instead of spending 3 months testing one approach, then 3 months testing another, you spend 3 months testing both and comparing results directly. The key is ensuring that your experiments are truly independent. The failure of one shouldn't affect the others. This might mean testing different marketing channels, exploring different revenue models, or developing different skill sets. The goal is creating a portfolio where individual failures don't cascade into systemic problems. The prototype principle. Perfectionism is the enemy of experimentation. When you try to create polished, complete solutions before testing them, you invest too much time and energy to abandon them easily. The solution is embracing ugly prototypes that test core assumptions without requiring significant investment. The prototype principle means building the minimum viable version of your idea that can generate useful feedback. If you're testing a new service offering, create a simple landing page and see if people express interest before building the full solution. If you're exploring a new skill, find the fastest way to get basic competence before committing to extensive training. This approach dramatically reduces the cost of being wrong while maintaining the upside of being right. You can test 10 rough ideas in the time it would take to perfect one, and you'll learn more from the 10 tests than from the one perfect execution. The anti-fragile advantage. The ultimate goal of intelligent experimentation is building what researchers call anti-fragility, the ability to get stronger from stress and uncertainty rather than weaker. When your experiments are properly designed with limited downside and unlimited upside, each failure teaches you something valuable, while each success compounds your capabilities. This creates a system where volatility works in your favor. Market changes become opportunities to test new approaches. Setbacks become data points that improve your strategy. Uncertainty becomes a source of competitive advantage because you're comfortable operating in ambiguous conditions, while others are paralyzed by the lack of clarity. The anti-fragile approach transforms your relationship with risk from something to be minimized to something to be optimized. You're not trying to avoid all negative outcomes. You're trying to create systems where negative outcomes are manageable and positive outcomes are amplified. Building this capability requires practice with progressively larger experiments as your skills and confidence grow. Start with risks that feel almost trivial, then gradually increase the stakes as you develop better judgment about what works and what doesn't. The path forward is clear. Define your kill criteria, size your bets appropriately, review systematically, and run multiple experiments in parallel. Embrace ugly prototypes and build anti-fragile systems that get stronger from uncertainty. But even as you master the art of intelligent risk-taking, another trap lurks beneath the surface, one that scans relentlessly for problems while remaining blind to possibilities, ensuring that you see every reason why things won't work, while missing every reason why they might. Chapter 7: Pessimism. You scan the project timeline and immediately spot 17 things that could go wrong. The budget that might get cut, the team member who could quit, the technology that might fail, the client who could change their mind. Your brain is a heat-seeking missile for problems, finding threats in every corner while remaining mysteriously blind to possibilities. You call this being realistic. But what you're really doing is training your attention to search for failure while ignoring the very opportunities that could make success inevitable. Pessimism feels like intelligence. It appears sophisticated and worldly, the opposite of naive optimism or wishful thinking. But there's a hidden cost to this mental habit that goes far beyond mood or motivation. When you consistently expect things to go wrong, you unconsciously design your actions to confirm that expectation. You prepare less thoroughly because you assume failure is inevitable. You communicate less confidently because you don't believe in the outcome. You invest less energy because you're already mentally rehearsing the post-mortem. The self-fulfilling prophecy. The most dangerous aspect of pessimistic thinking isn't that it makes you feel bad, it's that it makes bad outcomes more likely. Your expectations shape your behavior in subtle but powerful ways. When you expect a presentation to go poorly, you prepare less thoroughly and deliver with less conviction. When you expect a project to fail, you communicate less enthusiastically and invest less creative energy. When you expect people to reject your ideas, you present them less persuasively and follow up less persistently. This creates a feedback loop that's hard to break. Pessimistic expectations lead to half-hearted efforts, which produce mediocre results, which confirm pessimistic expectations. You interpret these outcomes as evidence that you were right to be negative, missing the role your own mindset played in creating the very failures you predicted. Meanwhile, your attention becomes trained to notice problems while filtering out opportunities. You see every reason why the new strategy won't work, but miss the early signs that it's gaining traction. You focus on the team members who are struggling, but overlook the ones who are exceeding expectations. You remember every setback in vivid detail, but forget the small wins that could build momentum. The cruel irony is that this pattern often develops in people who are genuinely trying to be helpful. They think that by identifying problems early, they're protecting their teams and organizations from failure. But problem identification without solution generation is just sophisticated complaining. It consumes energy without creating value. The realism trap. The biggest myth about pessimism is that it represents clear-eyed realism, while optimism represents naive delusion. This false dichotomy misses the crucial distinction between different types of optimism and different types of realism. Naive optimism ignores problems and assumes everything will work out magically. Constructive optimism acknowledges problems and focuses on workable solutions. True realism includes both potential downsides and potential upsides, both risks and opportunities, both obstacles and leverage points. When you focus exclusively on what could go wrong, you're not being realistic. You're being selectively pessimistic. You're choosing to see only half the picture while convincing yourself you're seeing the whole thing. Constructive optimism is actually more realistic than pessimism because it accounts for the full range of possible outcomes and your ability to influence them. It acknowledges that problems exist while maintaining focus on the actions that could solve them. It recognizes risks while also recognizing opportunities. It prepares for setbacks while working toward breakthroughs. This approach is grounded in evidence rather than emotion. Instead of assuming things will go well or poorly, you look at what's actually happening and what you can actually control. You make plans based on data rather than mood. You adjust your strategy based on results rather than fears. The attention training system. The solution isn't forced positivity or denial of real problems. It's systematic retraining of your attention to notice leverage points as readily as you notice landmines. This requires deliberate practice because your brain's negativity bias is hardwired and automatic. Left to its own devices, your mind will always find the problems faster than the possibilities. The two lists ritual creates a structured way to balance your attention between risks and responses. When you're facing a challenging situation, you first acknowledge the legitimate concerns by listing the top 5 things that could go wrong. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. You're not ignoring problems, you're processing them systematically. But here's the crucial second step that most people skip. For each risk you identify, you write down a specific countermove you could take if that problem materializes. This transforms abstract worries into concrete contingency plans. Instead of feeling helpless about potential problems, you feel prepared to handle them. This ritual serves multiple purposes. First, it satisfies your brain's need to identify and prepare for threats, which reduces the anxiety that drives pessimistic thinking. Second, it shifts your focus from problems you can't control to responses you can control. Third, it builds confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes up, which makes optimistic thinking feel more credible. The one-path commitment. After you've processed the risks and prepared your counter moves, the next step is choosing the most workable path forward and committing to it for a specific time period. This isn't about finding the perfect strategy, it's about picking a credible approach and giving it a fair test before second-guessing yourself. The one-path rule prevents the paralysis that often follows thorough risk analysis. When you've identified all the ways something could go wrong, it's tempting to keep searching for a risk-free option that doesn't exist. Instead, you choose the path with the best risk-reward ratio and commit to executing it fully for 7 days before reviewing the evidence. This commitment is crucial because most strategies require consistent execution over time to show results. If you're constantly switching approaches based on daily fluctuations or minor setbacks, you never give any single approach enough time to work. The 7-day commitment creates enough stability to generate meaningful data while being short enough to adjust quickly if the evidence clearly suggests a different direction. During this commitment period, you focus on execution rather than evaluation. You don't waste mental energy second-guessing your choice or imagining alternative approaches. You channel all your attention and effort into making your chosen path work as well as possible. The proof unit practice. Pessimistic thinking thrives on selective attention that notices failures while overlooking successes. The proof unit practice systematically corrects this bias by training your brain to notice and remember evidence of progress, no matter how small. Every day, you log 3 specific pieces of evidence that things are working or improving. These don't have to be major breakthroughs. They can be small wins, positive feedback, completed tasks, or any other concrete signs of forward movement. The key is specificity and consistency. Made progress is too vague. Completed the first draft of the proposal and received positive feedback from 2 team members is a proof unit. This practice works because it creates a competing narrative to the pessimistic story your brain tells by default. Instead of focusing exclusively on what's not working, you build a database of what is working. Over time, this shifts your baseline expectations from things usually go wrong to things usually work out when I put in consistent effort. The proof units also serve as evidence during difficult moments when pessimistic thinking tries to take over. When you're tempted to conclude that nothing is working, you can review your accumulated evidence of progress and make decisions based on data rather than mood. The solution-first language. The language you use to discuss challenges shapes how you think about them and how others respond to them. Pessimistic language focuses on problems, obstacles, and reasons why things won't work. Solution-first language acknowledges the same realities, but frames them in terms of what needs to be addressed rather than what's wrong. Instead of, "This project is doomed because the timeline is unrealistic," you say, "We need to adjust the timeline or scope to make this project successful." Instead of, "The team doesn't have the skills for this," you say, "We need to identify the skill gaps and create a development plan." Instead of, "The client will never approve this budget," you say, "We need to build a stronger business case or find ways to reduce costs." This isn't semantic manipulation, it's cognitive redirection. When you frame challenges as problems to be solved rather than evidence of inevitable failure, your brain starts searching for solutions instead of collecting more evidence of impossibility. The shift in language creates a shift in thinking, which creates a shift in behavior. The key is maintaining this discipline even when discussing legitimate concerns. You can acknowledge real problems without surrendering to helplessness about them. You can be honest about challenges without assuming they're insurmountable. The evidence-based hope. The goal isn't blind optimism that ignores reality. It's evidence-based hope that's anchored to concrete plans and measurable progress. This type of optimism is actually more durable than naive positivity because it's built on substance rather than sentiment. Evidence-based hope starts with honest assessment of current conditions, acknowledges real obstacles, and then focuses on the specific actions that could improve the situation. It's optimistic about outcomes because it's realistic about inputs. It expects good results because it's committed to good processes. This approach makes optimism feel credible rather than forced. When your hope is connected to specific plans and measurable actions, it doesn't feel like wishful thinking. It feels like reasonable expectation based on your commitment to doing what's necessary. The evidence also provides resilience when setbacks occur. Instead of interpreting problems as proof that optimism was naive, you see them as data points that inform adjustments to your strategy. Your fundamental belief in the possibility of success remains intact because it's based on your ability to adapt and improve, not on the assumption that everything will go smoothly. The momentum multiplier. As you practice constructive optimism, something interesting happens to the people around you. Optimism is contagious in the same way that pessimism is, but it spreads through different mechanisms. While pessimism spreads through shared complaints and mutual validation of problems, optimism spreads through shared action and mutual reinforcement of possibilities. When you consistently focus on solutions rather than problems, others start bringing you their challenges because they know you'll help them think through responses rather than just commiserating about difficulties. When you maintain evidence-based hope during setbacks, others start trusting your judgment about what's possible. When you demonstrate that optimistic thinking leads to better results, others start adopting similar approaches. This creates a positive feedback loop where your optimism enables better collaboration, which produces better results, which reinforces optimistic thinking in yourself and others. Teams that practice constructive optimism move faster, recover more quickly from setbacks, and find creative solutions more readily than teams stuck in pessimistic patterns. The path forward is clear. Balance your risk awareness with response planning, commit to workable paths for meaningful test periods, and train your attention to notice proof of progress. Use solution-first language and anchor your hope to evidence and action. But even as you master the art of constructive optimism, one final trap remains, perhaps the most insidious of all, because it operates completely outside your conscious awareness, shaping your thoughts and decisions through the simple act of what you choose to put into your mind each day. Chapter 8, Mental Inputs. You wake up and immediately reach for your phone. Before your feet hit the floor, you've absorbed 17 news headlines, 12 social media updates, and 3 urgent emails that aren't actually urgent. By the time you sit down to do meaningful work, your mind is already cluttered with other people's priorities, problems, and perspectives. You wonder why focus feels so difficult, why decisions seem harder than they should be, why your thinking feels muddy despite having access to more information than any human in history. The answer is simpler than you might expect, but more important than most people realize. Your mind is not a passive observer of information. It's an active factory that transforms whatever you feed it into thoughts, emotions, and decisions. And just like any factory, the quality of your outputs depends entirely on the quality of your inputs. Feed it garbage, and it produces garbage. Feed it excellence, and it produces excellence. The problem is that most people have never learned to be intentional about what they allow into their mental factory. The manufacturing process. Your brain doesn't distinguish between information that serves your goals and information that derails them. It simply processes whatever you give it, weaving random inputs into the fabric of your thinking without asking whether they belong there. That inflammatory news article becomes part of your worldview. That pessimistic conversation becomes part of your expectations. That scattered social media feed becomes part of your attention patterns. This happens because your mind operates on what researchers call availability heuristics. You make decisions based on what information is most readily accessible in your memory. The ideas, images, and emotions you've been exposed to recently have disproportionate influence on your thinking, regardless of their relevance or accuracy. If you've been consuming content about economic uncertainty, you'll see threats everywhere. If you've been reading about breakthrough innovations, you'll notice opportunities more readily. The implications are staggering. Every piece of content you consume is literally reshaping your neural pathways, influencing what you notice, how you interpret events, and what actions feel natural. You're not just passively receiving information, you're actively programming your own thinking patterns. The question is whether you're doing this intentionally or by accident. Most people do it by accident. They consume whatever appears in their feeds, whatever colleagues share, whatever the algorithm serves up. They treat their attention like a public commons where anyone can dump anything at any time. Then they wonder why their thinking feels scattered, their decisions feel uncertain, and their focus feels fragmented. The willpower myth. The biggest misconception about information consumption is that you can handle anything as long as you have enough willpower or critical thinking skills. This sounds reasonable until you understand how your brain actually works. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day, while information exposure is constant and cumulative. Even if you consciously reject bad ideas, your brain still processes them, and processing requires energy. More importantly, repetition creates neural pathways regardless of whether you agree with what you're hearing. If you're constantly exposed to pessimistic perspectives, your brain becomes better at generating pessimistic thoughts, even if you consciously disagree with pessimism. If you're regularly consuming scattered, fragmented content, your thinking becomes more scattered and fragmented, even if you recognize the problem intellectually. This is why smart, capable people often find themselves thinking in ways that don't serve their goals. They assume that intelligence is enough to filter out bad inputs, but intelligence doesn't protect you from the cumulative effects of repeated exposure. Your brain is designed to adapt to its environment, and if that environment is filled with low-quality information, your thinking will adapt accordingly. The solution isn't stronger willpower, it's better systems. Instead of trying to resist bad inputs through force of will, You design your information environment to make good inputs easy and bad inputs difficult. You become the architect of your own mental diet rather than a passive consumer of whatever happens to cross your path. The factory redesign. Think of your mind as a manufacturing facility where information is the raw material and thoughts are the finished products. Just as a furniture maker wouldn't use rotting wood to build quality pieces, you shouldn't use low-grade information to build quality thinking. The first step is conducting an honest audit of what's currently entering your mental factory. For 24 hours, track every piece of information you consume. Every article, every conversation, every video, every social media post, every podcast, every email. Don't change your behavior, just observe and record. Most people are shocked by what this audit reveals. They discover they're consuming far more information than they realized, much of it repetitive, irrelevant, or actively counterproductive. The audit reveals patterns you can't see when you're in the middle of consumption. You notice that certain sources consistently leave you feeling anxious or scattered. You realize that you're getting the same information from multiple sources, creating an illusion of learning while actually just reinforcing the same limited perspectives. You discover that much of what you consume is entertainment disguised as education, providing the feeling of productivity without actual value. Armed with this awareness, you can begin the redesign process. The goal isn't to eliminate all information consumption. It's to become intentional about what you allow in, when you allow it, and why. You're shifting from passive consumption to active curation. The 3-list system. Effective information curation requires clear boundaries about what belongs in your mental factory and what doesn't. The 3-list system creates these boundaries by categorizing all potential inputs into 3 distinct categories based on their impact on your thinking and productivity. The no-go list contains sources and types of content that consistently derail your focus or degrade your thinking. This might include certain news websites that specialize in outrage, social media accounts that promote comparison and envy, or conversation topics that inevitably lead to unproductive arguments. These aren't necessarily bad sources in an absolute sense. They're just bad for your particular goals and mental state. Creating this list requires honest self-assessment. Which sources leave you feeling anxious, scattered, or pessimistic? Which types of content trigger time-wasting behaviors or negative thought patterns? Which conversations consistently drain your energy without providing value? The key is focusing on effects rather than intentions. Even well-meaning sources can be toxic to your mental environment if they consistently produce negative outcomes. The primetime list contains high-quality sources that you're allowed to consume before important work sessions. These are inputs that actually improve your thinking, provide relevant insights, or put you in a productive mental state. They might include specific books, podcasts, or articles from sources you trust, conversations with people who challenge and inspire you, or content directly related to your current projects and goals. The criteria for primetime content is strict. It must either provide actionable insights you can use immediately, expose you to high-quality thinking that improves your own cognitive processes, or put you in a mental state that enhances your performance. If content doesn't meet these criteria, it doesn't belong in your primetime consumption, regardless of how interesting or entertaining it might be. The timing protocol. When you consume, information is almost as important as what you consume. Your brain's receptivity to new inputs varies throughout the day, and consuming the wrong type of content at the wrong time can derail your entire day's productivity. The timing protocol creates structure around when different types of consumption are appropriate. Before important work sessions, your mind should be clear and focused, not cluttered with other people's priorities and problems. This means avoiding news, social media, and random articles before you tackle your most important tasks. Instead, you might review notes from previous work sessions, read something directly relevant to your current project, or consume content that puts you in a confident, creative mental state. The principle is simple. Open the information gates after you've shipped meaningful work, not before. Use high-quality inputs as rewards for completed work rather than as procrastination tools that prevent work from happening. This creates a positive feedback loop where good work habits are reinforced by good consumption habits. After completing significant work, your mind is often tired and less discriminating about what it processes. This is actually the ideal time for lower-stakes consumption like entertainment, casual reading, or social media browsing. Your work is done, so these inputs can't derail your productivity, and your tired brain benefits from the mental downtime. The signal amplification strategy. In our information-rich environment, the challenge isn't finding good content. It's filtering out the noise so you can focus on the signal. Most people consume information in a scattered, reactive way that amplifies noise while burying signal. The signal amplification strategy flips this dynamic by systematically increasing your exposure to high-value information while decreasing exposure to everything else. This starts with source consolidation. Instead of following dozens of mediocre sources, identify the few exceptional ones that consistently provide insights you can't get elsewhere. Instead of reading every article about your industry, find the 2 or 3 writers who consistently offer unique perspectives and deep analysis. Instead of listening to every podcast in your field, choose the ones that regularly feature the most thoughtful practitioners and researchers. Quality beats quantity in information consumption, just as it does in every other area of life. 10 insights from exceptional sources are more valuable than 100 pieces of information from average sources. The exceptional sources also tend to reference other high-quality work, creating a natural filtering system that leads you to more good content without requiring additional effort. Batch consumption further amplifies signal by allowing you to process related information together rather than in scattered fragments. Instead of reading articles throughout the day as they appear, designate specific times for information consumption and process multiple pieces of related content in sequence. This creates context and connections that individual pieces can't provide on their own. The feedback loop. The ultimate test of your information curation isn't how much you're learning, it's how much your thinking and decision-making are improving. The feedback loop creates systematic ways to measure whether your information diet is actually serving your goals or just creating the illusion of productivity. Track the quality of your decisions over time. Are you making choices more quickly and confidently? Are your predictions about outcomes becoming more accurate? Are you identifying opportunities and solutions that you would have missed before? These are the real measures of whether your information consumption is adding value. Monitor your mental state and energy levels. Do you feel more focused and clear-headed after consuming your curated content? Do you find it easier to start important work? Do you feel more optimistic and solution-oriented? Your emotional and cognitive state is a reliable indicator of whether your information diet is nourishing or depleting your mental resources. Pay attention to the ideas and insights you generate. Are you having more original thoughts? Are you making more creative connections between different concepts? Are you developing unique perspectives on problems in your field? High-quality inputs should stimulate high-quality thinking, not just passive absorption of other people's ideas. The path forward requires discipline but delivers disproportionate returns. Audit your current information consumption, create clear boundaries about what belongs in your mental factory, and implement timing protocols that protect your most productive hours. Focus on signal over noise and measure results through improved thinking and decision-making. But even as you master the art of curating your mental inputs, all these individual skills must come together into something greater, a unified system that transforms you from someone who thinks about change into someone who creates it consistently and systematically. Chapter 9, Go Now. You've spent 8 chapters learning to see the invisible forces that have been quietly sabotaging your progress. You've discovered how indifference erodes your reputation one mediocre performance at a time, how indecision compounds opportunity costs while competitors accumulate advantages, how self-doubt shrinks your swings just when you need to swing hardest. You've learned to transform worry into action, calibrate risk like a professional, maintain constructive optimism under pressure, and curate your mental inputs like the precious resource they are. But knowledge without action is just sophisticated procrastination. The difference between people who read about change and people who create change isn't intelligence, talent, or circumstances. It's the willingness to move from understanding to implementation. Right now, in this moment, you have everything you need to become unstoppable. The question isn't whether you're ready. The question is whether you'll start. The system revealed. What you've learned isn't just a collection of techniques. It's a complete operating system for high performance. Each trap you've studied represents a broken loop in your mental software, and each counter system represents a repair that restores optimal function. When these repairs work together, they create something greater than the sum of their parts, a self-reinforcing cycle of continuous improvement. Decision velocity generates more learning cycles, which builds better judgment, which enables faster decisions. Cognitive gatekeeping improves the quality of your mental inputs, which upgrades your thinking, which produces better outputs. The mental factory model helps you engineer your identity through consistent action, which makes future action feel more natural. Complaint conversion transforms problems into plans, which creates momentum, which builds confidence. These systems interlock like gears in a precision machine. When you make decisions faster, you get more feedback, which makes you more confident, which makes you willing to take smarter risks, which generates more learning, which improves your decision-making. When you curate your mental inputs, you think more clearly, which helps you spot opportunities that pessimistic thinking would miss, which creates proof units that reinforce optimistic thinking. The beauty of this system is that it becomes easier over time, not harder. Each positive loop reinforces the others, creating compound returns on your initial investment of effort. What starts as conscious discipline becomes unconscious competence. What begins as forced behavior becomes natural identity. The leverage points. You now control 3 fundamental levers that determine your trajectory: pace, focus, and risk calibration. Most people leave these to chance, reacting to circumstances rather than proactively designing their experience. You're about to join the small percentage who engineer their own momentum. Pace is your ability to move from decision to action to feedback to adjustment faster than your environment changes. When you can complete learning cycles quickly, you adapt faster than problems can compound. When you can ship work consistently, you build trust and create opportunities. When you can recover from setbacks rapidly, you become anti-fragile, strengthened by volatility rather than weakened by it. Focus is your ability to direct your attention and energy toward what matters most while filtering out everything else. When you can work deeply on important problems, you produce disproportionate value. When you can resist the pull of urgent but unimportant demands, you create space for breakthrough thinking. When you can maintain clarity about your priorities, you make better trade-offs and avoid the scattered effort that produces scattered results. Risk calibration is your ability to take intelligent chances that compound in your favor over time. When you can size bets appropriately, you protect your downside while creating multiple shots at upside. When you can fail fast and cheap, you learn without catastrophic cost. When you can scale what works and kill what doesn't, you build a portfolio of wins that more than compensate for inevitable losses. The relationship revolution. The changes you're about to make will transform not just your work, but your relationships. When you stop ruminating and start acting, you become more present with the people who matter. When you convert complaints into requests, your conversations become more productive and less draining. When you maintain constructive optimism, you become someone others want to collaborate with rather than someone they tolerate. People will notice that you're different. They'll see that you follow through on commitments, that you make decisions without endless deliberation, that you approach challenges with solution-focused energy rather than problem-focused anxiety. They'll start bringing you opportunities because they trust your execution. They'll seek your perspective because they value your judgment. They'll want to work with you because you make things happen. This creates a virtuous cycle where better relationships lead to better opportunities, which lead to better results, which lead to even better relationships. Your network becomes a force multiplier for your capabilities rather than just a social safety net. Your reputation becomes an asset that opens doors rather than just a reflection of past performance. The shift happens gradually, then suddenly. People begin to see you as someone who gets things done, who can be counted on, who brings energy and solutions to difficult situations. This perception becomes reality as you continue to demonstrate these qualities consistently over time. The achievement acceleration. With your new operating system in place, you'll accomplish more in the next 12 months than you have in the previous 24. This isn't hyperbole. It's the predictable result of removing friction from your decision-making, eliminating waste from your attention, and optimizing your learning cycles. You'll ship work weekly instead of monthly. You'll make decisions in days instead of weeks. You'll recover from setbacks in hours instead of months. You'll identify and pursue opportunities while others are still analyzing whether they're real. You'll build skills through deliberate practice while others debate whether they have talent. The compound effect is extraordinary. Each week of consistent execution builds momentum for the next week. Each decision made quickly creates space for the next decision. Each risk taken intelligently provides data for better risk-taking. Each problem converted into action builds confidence for tackling bigger problems. Your colleagues will wonder what changed. Your friends will ask for your secret. Your family will notice your increased confidence and energy. But there's no secret, just the systematic application of principles that most people know but few people practice consistently. The effortless excellence. The most surprising discovery awaits you 6 months from now. Excellence becomes easier, not harder. When you have systems instead of relying on willpower, when you have clear processes instead of making everything up as you go, when you have proven frameworks instead of hoping for inspiration, high performance becomes your default rather than your exception. The mental overhead disappears. You stop wasting energy on decisions you've already systematized. You stop burning cognitive bandwidth on problems you've already solved. You stop experiencing the friction that comes from constantly fighting your own habits and environment. This is the ultimate payoff. A life where your best work feels natural rather than forced, where your biggest challenges feel manageable rather than overwhelming, where your most ambitious goals feel inevitable rather than impossible. You become someone who creates rather than consumes, who builds rather than just plans, who ships rather than just dreams. The automation happens gradually. First, you consciously apply the frameworks you've learned. Then, the frameworks become habits. Finally, the habits become identity. You don't have to remember to work with full effort. You're someone who works with full effort. You don't have to force yourself to make decisions quickly. You're someone who makes decisions quickly. You don't have to try to maintain optimism. You're someone who expects solutions and finds them. The 10-minute start. Everything you've learned can be activated in the next 10 minutes. Not perfectly, not completely, but meaningfully. The gap between knowing and doing isn't a chasm that requires months to cross. It's a step that requires only the decision to take it. Look at your current situation and identify which of the 7 traps is costing you the most right now. Is indifference making your work forgettable? Is indecision keeping you stuck on choices that should have been made weeks ago? Is self-doubt shrinking your ambitions? Is worry burning energy without producing progress? Is overcaution limiting your learning? Is pessimism narrowing your vision? Are poor mental inputs clouding your thinking? Pick the trap that's most active in your life today and deploy one countermove immediately. If indifference is the problem, define your minimum standard for the next task and execute it with full effort. If indecision is paralyzing you, classify your stuck choice as a 2-way or 1-way door and set a deadline for the 2-way doors. If self-doubt is holding you back, Log 3 pieces of evidence that you can handle challenges and take one small action toward your goal. The specific action matters less than the pattern you're establishing. You're proving to yourself that you can notice traps and respond to them immediately rather than letting them run unchecked. You're building the muscle of conscious intervention that will serve you for the rest of your life. The builder's identity. This is your moment of transformation, from thinker to builder, from planner to executor, from someone who has good intentions to someone who produces good results. The world doesn't need more people who understand what should be done. It needs more people who actually do it. You're about to join a small but powerful group, the people who move first, who ship consistently, who learn from everything, who improve relentlessly. These are the people who create the opportunities that others wait for, who solve the problems that others complain about, who build the solutions that others wish existed. This identity isn't earned through a single dramatic gesture. It's built through thousands of small choices to act instead of hesitate, to ship instead of perfect, to learn instead of defend, to improve instead of settle. Each choice reinforces the identity. Each action provides evidence. Each result builds momentum. The beautiful truth is that you don't have to become someone else to achieve extraordinary results. You just have to become the best version of who you already are. Someone who notices what needs to be done and does it. Someone who sees problems as puzzles to solve rather than evidence of impossibility. Someone who treats setbacks as data rather than verdicts. The unstoppable future. 6 months from now, you'll look back on this moment as the turning point. Not because everything became easy, but because you became someone who handles difficulty with grace and competence. Not because you stopped encountering obstacles, but because you became someone who converts obstacles into opportunities. You'll have a reputation for reliability, a track record of delivery, and a portfolio of intelligent risks that have paid off. You'll be known as someone who makes things happen, who can be trusted with important projects, who brings solutions rather than just problems. You'll have built something meaningful, whether that's a business, a body of work, a set of relationships, or simply a life that reflects your values and capabilities. The compound effect will be undeniable. Your decision-making will be faster and more accurate. Your execution will be more consistent and effective. Your recovery from setbacks will be quicker and more complete. Your ability to spot and seize opportunities will be sharper and more reliable. Most importantly, you'll have proven to yourself that you can change, that you can grow, that you can become someone who creates the life they want rather than just hoping it will happen. This proof becomes the foundation for even bigger changes, even greater challenges, even more ambitious goals. The time for maybe is over. The time for someday has passed. The time for when conditions are perfect will never come. The time is now. The person is you. The choice is simple. Stay stuck in the traps that have been holding you back, or step into the system that will set you free. Decide, learn, just repeat. The world is waiting for what you'll build. Go now.